Right now, your bone marrow is producing 2 million red blood cells every second. Your brain is firing across 100 trillion connections. And your heart will beat around 2.5 billion times over an average lifetime, without a single day off. Here are 18 trivia questions about the human body that will make you deeply uncomfortable with what you actually are. How long are your intestines if laid out end to end? How long are your intestines if laid out end to end? Approximately 9 meters, roughly the length of a double-decker bus. The small intestine alone is 6 to 7 meters. Its inner surface, covered in microscopic finger-like villi, has a total area roughly the size of a tennis court. How many bones are you born with, compared to how many you have as an adult? How many bones are you born with, compared to how many you have as an adult? Babies are born with around 270 to 300 bones. Adults have 206. Many smaller bones fuse together during childhood and adolescence, with most fully merged by the mid-20s. Which internal organ can regenerate itself almost entirely? Which internal organ can regenerate itself almost entirely? The liver. If up to 70% of the liver is surgically removed, it can regenerate to its original size within weeks. It is the only internal organ capable of this level of regrowth. How fast do nerve impulses travel through the human body? How fast do nerve impulses travel through the human body? It depends on the nerve. The fastest sensory and motor signals travel at around 120 meters per second. Pain signals move much slower, roughly 1 meter per second, which is why you sometimes react to an injury before you feel it. How much saliva does the average person produce in a lifetime? How much saliva does the average person produce in a lifetime? Approximately 40,000 liters, enough to fill 2 standard swimming pools. Saliva is produced continuously to aid digestion, protect tooth enamel, and prevent bacterial overgrowth in the mouth. How many bacteria live on and inside the human body? How many bacteria live on and inside the human body? Roughly 38 trillion, approximately equal to the total number of human cells. The gut alone hosts a microbial community weighing around 1.5 kilograms and comprising thousands of species. You are, in a meaningful sense, more microbe than human. What is the total length of blood vessels in a single human body? What is the total length of blood vessels in a single human body? Approximately 100,000 kilometers, including arteries, veins, and capillaries. That is 2.5 times the circumference of the Earth. At a normal walking pace, it would take over 4 years to cover that distance on foot. Which part of the eye has no blood supply? Which part of the eye has no blood supply? The cornea. It receives oxygen and nutrients directly from tears and the fluid inside the eye. The absence of blood vessels is also why corneal transplants are less likely to be rejected. The immune system has limited access to the tissue. How long does a red blood cell live? How long does a red blood cell live? Approximately 120 days. In that time, it circulates through the body around 75,000 times before being broken down by the spleen and liver. To keep up, your bone marrow replaces around 2 million red blood cells every single second. Do human embryos develop tails? Do human embryos develop tails? Yes. Between weeks 4 and 8 of pregnancy, human embryos develop a visible tail structure. It is typically reabsorbed as development continues and muscles form. In extremely rare documented cases, a few per decade globally, the tail persists at birth. Which sense develops first in the womb? Which sense develops first in the womb? Hearing. By around 18 weeks, a fetus can detect sound vibrations. By 25 weeks, it can respond to voices and music from outside the womb. Newborns recognize their mother's voice from birth. It is one of the few things familiar to them when they arrive. What is the human brain mostly made of? What is the human brain mostly made of? Fat, approximately 60% of its dry weight. Despite its reputation as the body's most sophisticated computing hardware, the brain is the fattiest organ in the human body. It weighs around 1.4 kilograms and runs on roughly 20 watts of power. How many muscles are used to take a single step? How many muscles are used to take a single step? Around 200. They coordinate across the foot, leg, hip, core, and arms to generate movement and maintain balance. Walking is one of the most mechanically complex actions the human body performs. which is why replicating it in robotics has taken decades. What happens to your sense of smell while you sleep? What happens to your sense of smell while you sleep? It largely shuts down. Unlike hearing, which remains partially active as a threat detection system, your sense of smell becomes significantly suppressed during sleep. This is why smoke alarms exist. You may not smell a fire while asleep. How long does food take to travel through your entire digestive system? How long does food take to travel through your entire digestive system? Between 24 and 72 hours, depending on the individual. Food spends roughly 4 to 5 hours in the stomach, up to 6 hours in the small intestine, and up to 48 hours in the large intestine before being fully processed and expelled. Why do older people appear to have larger ears and noses? Why do older people appear to have larger ears and noses? Because they do. Cartilage does not stop growing the way bone does. The ears and nose continue to grow slowly throughout your entire life. Gravity also pulls the cartilage downward over time, increasing the effect. How many times does the average heart beat in a lifetime? How many times does the average heart beat in a lifetime? Approximately 2.5 billion times over 70 years, around 100,000 beats per day, pumping roughly 7,500 liters of blood in that time. The heart never rests between beats. Every pause is the next beat beginning. At what age is human bone density at its peak? At what age is human bone density at its peak? Around 30. After that, bone density gradually declines for the rest of your life, which is why nutrition and exercise in your 20s has consequences that compound over decades. By the time most people think about bone health, the window for building it has largely closed.